Hello, everyone, and welcome to this broadcast. Just fixing my audio. I think everything is set. I'll give people some chance to join. I'm here to do an update on the first day of protests during the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. In Chicago, there's still some protesting going on, but there was a massive march. I'm the editor of the newsletter The Dissenter, and The Dissenter is where I cover journalists, attacks on journalists, whistleblowers, and I'm there covering government secrecy. And a lot of what I'm talking about tonight is outside of the scope of this newsletter. That said, I was down there. I take an interest in what police are doing as independent reporters and corporate reporters on the scene are trying to cover the protests. Whether they're doing it well or poorly, it doesn't really make a difference. They have a right to point a camera and record protesters. So I'm here to lift up, however, some colleagues to discuss some of their reporting, the coverage of the protests that took place today. I was in the park in Union Park, where a massive march for Palestine was organized. This group, the Coalition to March on the DNC, they did this for for around a year. Around a year, they worked on getting this all organized. They did a very good job, and they challenged the city of Chicago's bureaucrats. At least one particular individual, last name Gallardo, who was making it difficult for them to get a sound stage, difficult to get porta potties even. That was something that they had to fight for. They were in the park for 4 to 5 hours, and they had to fight for a place for people to go to the bathroom while everyone was in a mass gathering. So first, before I get into the protest action of the day, I must show solidarity and put this on the screen. And we're talking about the war on Gaza. So here we have from the International Federation of Journalists, the global union, we have a incident, or we have another killing of a journalist in Gaza. Journalist Salma al-Qudumi was injured and then transferred to a hospital on August 18th, reporting, I understand, was shot in the back by the Israeli army in southern Gaza. Then I have a second journalist to put on the screen. This journalist did not survive. This journalist was killed. And this is also from IFJ. We mourn the killing of freelance photojournalist Ibrahim Muharib, who lost his life on August 18th due to Israel's shelling in Western Khan Yunis. And then they mentioned that at least 123 journalists have been killed in Gaza since the war started. You know, many of these reporters do go out and wear those press vests. And so that can make them a target. We know that when they are being killed, it is tantamount to murder. The military is going after these journalists. So I bring everything back to today's protesting, and let's go ahead and work our way backwards. The main march was a gathering of 200 plus organizations. The Coalition to March on the DNC says there were around 20,000 people. Maybe 15 to 20,000 people. I suppose it's possible. There were a lot of people that were in the park. The march didn't step off until about an hour, 15 minutes after scheduled. The rally didn't start on time, but that's okay. They had everyone there in the park and they did their rally and had a lineup of speakers that could address the issues and the platform that everyone had united around to support and challenge the Democrats, to challenge the Harris Walls ticket that will be taking on Donald Trump and JD Vance. And so let me show you this clip from Status Coup. There weren't any incidents involving the press being arrested, but there were a few people who were arrested. There was a breach of the security fence, and all the media are now making a big deal out of this. And they're going to talk about how, there were a bunch of unruly protesters. Again, it was just a small handful, and there were, half a dozen or so that decided they wanted to try to break through the security fencing, and then they were basically stuck in between this area. There was a cheaper kind of fencing, and then there was a more heavy duty, significant structure that would be difficult to move. So there was basically two layers of security fencing, and there was a group that got in between, and then the police moved in on them, and that's where you're seeing the arrest. The arrest didn't happen during the march, and the organizers, weren't trying to have any confrontation. There wasn't really any reason for it, and the police did give the march space to move, and they shuffled them off to a location that barely fits the requirement of being within sight and sound of the United Center, the arena on the near west side of Chicago, where the convention's taking place. And while I speak right now, we're moving into the first night of the DNC, where all the politicians and all the delegates and everyone are gathered inside for speeches. On the outside, though, this is this incident took place towards the end of the march. So I'll put it up on screen here. This comes from John Farina, who is with Status Coup. Credit to John, and to the team. And Jordan Cheriton is, of course, involved with Status Coup. I've been on his show. He's very good to support my journalism and reporting on Assange. And I do recommend, I haven't had a chance to talk with him yet about his book, which is about Flint water crisis. I think it's We the Poisoned. But if you are looking for some quite an incredible read, and I recommend picking that book up. So this is on here. This happened with the police basically threatening to take the credentials away from press that didn't leave this little area inside the security fence.
In the park, media in the park. Press, you gotta leave the area or you'll set the press. Let's do it. Press, you have to leave the area. Go. Keep moving into the park. In our street, who's gotta get in the park? Gotta get in the park for I'm taking your video. Let's go. You guys are gonna lose your media passes if you don't go to the park. Right here, right in the open. Right here, right here. Why are you coming in? He's gone. Leave her alone. It's okay. Go. I've been telling you for 20 minutes. Get in the park.
That was the incident there. And as you can see, the press came through to capture what was going on with these protesters. And typically, they should have the right to record. And there's really no place for them to go without being shoved along with the protesters. And finally, the police were fed up and moved them out. I had left by the time this took place. So I did not personally witness. So credit to John Farina for capturing that. I don't think no reporters were arrested. There were a handful of arrests, as I said, of some people who came through that fence and were picked out by police, and also, didn't remove themselves from this space, so that put them at risk of arrest. And that was the most confrontational part of the evening for the big march that took place that took off from the park. The march actually was in this park area. There was a playground, and they walked through it. And then once they were inside, there was a stage that was set up, but they didn't really use it, and it wasn't totally caged in, but it did have that like freedom cage or free speech cage sort of vibe that you've seen. There's at several conventions, they have set up these free speech cages over the last 12, 16 years. And it's been a kind of a joke about whether they respect people's right to assemble and speak or not, and whether it actually satisfies the requirement of the First Amendment. So there's that. And then I've got video from Sean Beckner Carmichael, who is an independent journalist. He's been capturing what took place when people came back to Union Park. So this is in the last several minutes that in this park, there were some people who tried to set up tents and potentially start an encampment inside of this park area where they held this rally. So let's take a look at some of this footage. And there's more here of the police moving in. So let me pull that up here. You can follow this individual. This reporter is at A Cat with News. That is the handle if you want to see more of this video or support this person's work. They're on the ground as a reporter right now at the DNC.
Let him take it down. Give him some space. Give him some space. Let him take it down. Let him take it down. Take it down. Get out of our park. Get out of our park. You are at the 68 feet.
Okay, and then we've got some more here. As it escalates, as the police moved in, let me put this up there for you. And you can see in the green hat the legal observers. They're going to be there. They're with the National Lawyers Guild. They'll be the first to go to uh, check in on any arrestees if people are picked up during the convention. And they're there collecting kind of information, and now it's looping, but you can see them moving in on that encampment. So that's a flavor and a bit of the scene right now. There's the Poor People's Army had their march. The Poor People's Campaign has long been going to the DNC. They're down there with Sherry Hankala, one of their lead organizers. They have an encampment with some of the houseless people in Humboldt Park. That's in another area of Chicago, and they marched this evening. So back to the March for Palestine. The March for Palestine was organized around these demands, which were for the end of U.S. aid to Israel, particularly the military equipment. Apartheid Israel has murdered over 30,000 people. At this point, it's over 40,000. And most victims have been children, women, and the elderly. Over 50,000 have been injured. And Israel is the USA's landed aircraft carrier in the Middle East to control the region with its huge oil reserves for the profits of U.S. corporations. And then another plank that they had in their demands, what they were organizing people around coming together to demonstrate against and for, it was to demand money for jobs, school, healthcare, housing, and environment, not for war, immigrant rights, legalization for all, defend LGBTQIA and reproductive rights, defend the right to unionize and strike, stop police crimes, community control of the police now, and then more generally, justice, peace, and equality. Standard demands for any massive left protest. And so you had speakers that were there, familiar with some of them. And they also had a singer. She's an R&B singer, Jamila Woods, who's from the Chicago area. She sang some of her music. Cornel West was there to give a speech, but I want to play the first speech from this is Nazek Sankari, who's a co-chair of March on DNC, and then also the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. These organizers come from a Palestinian population that is over 1 million. It's the largest Palestinian population, or the concentration of Palestinians in the US. And that's where the DNC is holding their convention. So at a time that they are allowing the bombing of innocent people in Gaza to continue, the starvation, the famine, the kind of nightmare they are allowing to unfold against those people. Those people are in and around where they are going to have their coronation of their next nominee in the Democratic Party as a presidential candidate. This is the speech that Nazek Sankari gave credit to the live stream for the March on DNC 2024 that captured this speech. So let me put this up there.
The coalition to march on the DNC is a beautiful and broad coalition of more than 250 organizations representing.
You may have to turn this one up a little bit. The audio is kind of low.
Liberation, labor, reproductive, and LGBTQIA plus justice movements that are all standing with Palestine and demanding an end to all U.S. aid to the settler colonial to be within sight and sound of that convention. And we know that there is nothing to celebrate in that meeting. That meeting represents genocide and war. And we will be marching in our tens of thousands to make our demands clear that the Democrats must immediately end the U.S.-funded Israeli genocide on the Palestinian people. Let all humanitarian aid into Gaza. Stop arming Israel. And stop all aid to the racist, settler colonial terrorist state of Israel. And we will continue to march and show up and show out until we have made all of our demands clear and until we have ended the genocide and achieved total and complete liberation of Palestine and all colonized Arab lands. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And from the sea to the river, Palestine will live forever. Palestine will live forever. Thank you. Help me welcome up my co-MC, Sara Mahmoud.
Sorry for that. That was the opening remarks for the rally, and then the speakers came up on the stage, and yeah, no, they made it clear that a part of holding the demonstration was to convince people to withhold their votes if Harris is not going to endorse an end to aid to Israel and suspend it, at least suspend it until there's a permanent ceasefire, because the Netanyahu regime is opposed to this. And it has been an issue because in the talks, which CIA Director Bill Burdens has been a participant in those talks, Israel rejects a permanent ceasefire, which means that Hamas doesn't want to agree to the what's being negotiated. Then they won't support the terms of a ceasefire because it is not permanent. Without permanence, what's the point to agreeing to it? It's not a ceasefire if it isn't permanent. Then it's a pause. They made up this name many months ago, humanitarian pause, that lasted for several days. It didn't really do much good. It didn't, in the end, it didn't save much life at all because the massacres continued, the atrocities resumed. So this is the demand, or this should be the thing in the eyes of organizers, that people who have votes to give, that they don't vote for Harris as long as the Democratic Party is going to have as a part of their platform the sending of military arms to Israel for these constant attacks on refugee camps and civilians and hospitals and schools and shelters, etc. So I'll wind down. There's not really that big of a protest action tomorrow. I'm certain there will be little pockets of little demonstrations that will happen, but this was the major organized demonstration for today. And then there is an event that will be held on the 21st at 4 p.m. So 5 p.m. Eastern. There will be a march by the Chicago Coalition for Justice in Palestine, much like the one today, although this possibly will have more from the diaspora, the Palestinian diaspora of Chicago. And I think it will probably be a fairly large demonstration, and it's not, we're not certain what route they're going to take and where they'll go and the full nature of the action, but it's one that I'm hoping to be able to track And so before I conclude here, thank you for tuning in to this update. I didn't want to go for too long, but thank you for tuning in. Think that the algorithm isn't being too kind to me. There's only a few people who have found this. I put Palestine in the head. If I had put something else, I bet there would be more people. I know for a fact that if I had put something else, I could have just put day one of protesting at the DNC, and it would have been they've been triple the number here. Even though I don't do a lot with this channel, so it's oftentimes the case that I don't see a lot of people on the channel. So now while I have some time to do this, this is happening where I'm based. I can go out, I can come back and bring you some news. Uh, this channel isn't actually built to really push out that kind of reporting, but nonetheless, this is something I want to do. And I want to credit some colleagues who are out there, fellow media people, and some people I hope to be able to run into and maybe introduce myself to. First, I want to mention Mel Buer, who is with the Real News Network. That team is here collaborating with In These Times, doing some fantastic reporting. They have morning updates. Maximilian Alvarez is involved in that work. Talia Jane is there. Jinx Press is a radical journalism group in Chicago. They are live streaming, have live streamed, have done posts. Spider Monkey, Madison Swart, Sean Mulcahy from the Chicago Reader, a fantastic publication in Chicago, over 50 years in running, an important alternative media, and was on the ground. Then Carlos, a freelance journalist. Sean Beckner Carr Mitchell had the video of the encampment that I showed. John Farina from Status Quo had the police threatening to take away press credentials. And then Hector Luis Alamo was on the ground as well, posting photos and video. And these are all people, if you can find them and plug a few of their names into Twitter and see their postings, I guarantee that you're going to see some footage in real time that is worth your interest. We're worth your engagement. And if you have a chance to somehow donate and throw a few bucks to them, they have the skills. They're inclined to do live streaming. I'm not doing live streaming while I'm on the ground at the DNC. It's not really my thing anymore. About 10 or 15 years ago, maybe I would be one of the live streamers, but I don't regularly go to protests and live stream. So encourage you to support them because they're built to do that kind of media work. I'll just be posting some updates in the evenings, paying attention to some of the arrests that might happen, some of the police response. The police were out in mass. There were, again, dozens upon dozens and hundreds, probably 200 or 300 bicycle cops. They were following the march with several thousand people. They were following them with 4 or 5 police vans that could load arrestees. There was the police chopper. I think the Chicago police, around the same time that this Democratic National Convention is happening, they got a new police chopper. So that was flying over. And then when there was the scuffle going on, I understand that the chopper came down pretty low to Chicago. And I'm not really sure what was happening, maybe some kind of overhead surveillance, but they had a chopper that was flying overhead. And then you have cops around the outside of the park that are snapping photographs of anyone that they're taking kind of like 360 images, people who are cops around the perimeter, capturing all these different faces. I imagine there's facial recognition that they can do. They can take people's faces from these photos, and if someone was arrested, they could go back and probably use this to connect them to anything they might have done earlier. And, this is how they pick out people. This is how they find persons of interest that they could target for arrest. That sort of thing was happening in the park. But, by and large, it was a very vibrant, peaceful demonstration with banners, creative banners, several students, a number of students coming back to school. We're going to see student protests reignite at these universities and colleges. The universities and colleges have come up with new ways to suppress protest on their campuses. That's going to be a front line in these struggles. There will be student journalists that get swept up in the activity, become collateral damage, so to speak, as the university is blocking student protests. And that's definitely worth paying close attention. So with that, I thank you for tuning in to this broadcast. And just to reassure you, I could drop a little bit of movie. I watched the classic historical artifact Medium Cool on Saturday to get myself in the mode of what would be taking place this week, because the press have been talking constantly about parallels between 1968 and 2024. My friend and colleague Andy Thayer says the thing that is in common with the two is the massive amount of youth disaffection with political elites, with the dominant culture, etc. But yeah, that movie shot here in Chicago by Haskell Wexler, and I think it's 90, 100 minutes long. There's a loose narrative, but not much. It's more about the role of a camera and the role of a reporter as political events are unfolding. And then there's real life footage from when the Chicago police took their batons, wielded them, and started cracking skulls in Grant Park. None of that's happening right now. I hope, for the sake of people who don't deserve head injuries, that it doesn't happen during this week. But if it does, we'll cover it here. So with that, thank you all for being here. The dozen or so that Google allowed to see that I was streaming. And I will talk to you all again soon. I guess, as I'm saying to people, see you in the streets.